Okay, that sounds great.
Sounds good.
Oh, we have it done.
Okay, go ahead.
Members of the press will give me a high sign to say they're ready.
See you again.
I don't want to start before you're ready.
You saw me there? Oh yeah?
Members of the press ready? We're good to go. All right, great. Okay, thank you. I stand before you today along with some of my co-leads in the U.S. House of Representatives to reintroduce the Freedom of Religion Act. Last year, 8 of us led the charge on this bill right after then-candidate Trump first introduced the idea of a ban on Muslims. At that time, we wanted to make sure that there was a strong voice condemning the hateful, irrational rhetoric. But like most Americans, we were surprised that we would again be in this position and need to introduce this bill. So we're reintroducing the Freedom of Religion Act because we want to be sure that regardless of what executive order or what president, now or in the future, that the message is clear. We cannot discriminate based on religion in our immigration system. The belief in religious freedom in the United States was first enshrined in Thomas Jefferson's Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. It was this document that guaranteed, quote, civil rights have no dependence on religious opinion, and which our founding fathers would go on to use as the basis for much of the First Amendment. Jefferson said that this statute for religious freedom was, quote, meant to comprehend within the mantle of its protection the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian, the Muslim, the Hindu, and people of every denomination. He specifically wished to avoid othering or marginalization of smaller groups. The Founding Fathers were clear in expressing their desire to make America a nation tolerant of religious beliefs, and yet we are facing a political atmosphere in which the President, pandering to fear and prejudice, signed an executive order banning immigrants and non-immigrants from certain Muslim-majority countries. Let's not mince words. This ban is the culmination of xenophobia and anti-Muslim rhetoric by President Trump and makes us less safe. Trump ignores the very real human consequences of this action. Let's talk about how this impacts actual people. This past weekend, I went to Dulles International Airport to assist travelers affected by the ban and to stand with protesters in opposition to this illegal executive order, and to demand Customs and Border Patrol give those detained access to legal counsel. What I saw were scared American families in crisis, worried that their loved ones would be deported or not allowed back in. I encountered a family with a photo of their 30th brother, holder of a permanent resident card, a green card, now in an intensive care unit in Washington. Their mother, a citizen of Sudan, had secured a visa from our embassy to visit her seriously ill son, but she was turned away at the airport in Dubai under Trump's new order. I also met a young man, a green card holder, who had worked for the U.S. Army for years in Iraq. He'd immigrated to Virginia where his son was born, but his Iraqi wife, also a green card holder, was in Iraq with her son visiting her mother, now dying of cancer. He cried in my arms for many minutes, worried that his wife would not be able to return, and that if he went home to get his son to bring the son back to Virginia, he would not be able to return. I also requested to speak to Customs and Border Patrol officials directly, but was denied by airport police. Despite 4 members of Congress, Congressman Raskin, Congressman Connolly, Congressman Delaney, and I, asking CBP officials to enforce a federal court order to ensure the detained had access to legal counsel, we were turned away. Former New York Governor and U.S. Senator Herbert H. Lehman once said, quote, "It is immigrants who brought to this land the skills of their hands and brains to make of it a beacon of opportunity and hope for all men." This quote, which ironically is printed in the side of all of our U.S. passports, couldn't be truer. Our businesses and universities are in a panic. Their talented students and employees are being demonized and banned from the United States. These are the very real contributors to our U.S. economy and future growth. We must show that we will not tolerate racism, discrimination, and Islamophobia, and that those who do propagate it don't represent the diverse America that we celebrate. You know, every nation faces chapters of bigotry and discrimination against religious, ethnic, or racial groups, but we don't want to be the villains in our children's and grandchildren's history books. We must choose to be on the right side of history, which is why I'm gathered here today with many interfaith and religious leaders and political leaders. And I would now like to introduce a Gold Star parent, Mr. Khizr Khan, to address us in this bill. Mr. Khan.
Congressman Beyer, leading Congress in our faith, I am so honored to be standing before you. I come from Charlottesville, Virginia, city of Thomas Jefferson. 2 days ago, our mayor, brave mayor, Mike Khizr, declared Charlottesville to be the capital of resistance throughout this administration's time in White Office. I am so proud. Our values, our democratic values, our values enshrined in Constitution, Bill of Rights, are in good hands as long as democracy is, they lead the democracy in the Congress. The only way to deal with this clown show that is taking place in the White House, violating our basic decency of America, is the challenge in the Congress. This pendulum of majority swings both ways. Maybe the history has chosen these leaders to come forward and save the good name that is beacon of hope for the rest of the world. And these leaders are standing here, these brave leaders will take charge of Congress, will take charge of Senate and the House, and will save the alienation that my country is going through. Look at the foreign policy statement made 4 hours before Secretary of State is confirmed and had not been sworn yet. What is the hurry? Same thing is with banning Muslims. The malice of Donald Trump is evident. He tells Rudy Giuliani, devise a scheme, an illegal, unethical, un-American scheme to devise an order that will fulfill his un-American, unpatriotic promise, election promise. So this way of governing is alienating my country. Muslims are alienated within the United States, and in the world we remain alienated. They talk about it is for the safety and security of our country. Ask any member of the Defense Force, they will tell you, deployed in Iraq or other parts of the world, they will tell you that this policy challenges the loyalty of those who support us in those missions. So it is not that, it is the ugliest part of American history. And I stand before you and I appeal to you, continue to support these brave leaders, leaders in the Congress, leaders in the Senate. That is the only way we will endure this shameful period of this administration. Thank you very much.
Next, my honor to introduce the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, the distinguished member of Congress from New York, Mr. Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Don, very much. I have the dubious distinction of having to follow Mr. Khan, not once this week, but twice this week. An unenviable position to be in, but how proud I am for 2 days in a row to be in the presence of such a wonderful and great American. So thank you, Mr. Khan, for all you continue to do for your country. I want to thank Don Beyer and all my colleagues for this legislation today. When our founding fathers came together 240 years ago and fought a war against Great Britain for independence, and then after that war devised the Constitution, one of the main tenets was that there would be freedom of religion in the United States. Not freedom, not for a religion, not from a religion, but freedom of religion. That all religions would be welcome here. It's one of the most base foundations of our nation. It's why my grandparents and my mother, in many respects, came to the shore from Northern Ireland. It's why people continue to seek refuge from persecution around the world. We're in a moment where religious freedom is under attack in a truly unprecedented way. The White House is targeting Muslims with this heinous ban. They are targeting refugees, some of the people we should be most eager to help. And this is why it is important we continue to stand strong in opposition to the extreme policies coming from the Trump White House. That's why I appreciate you, Mr. Khan, and all you do. We should be all inspired by your relentless pursuit of justice and equality, despite the loss that you've sustained in your family and your life. This Muslim ban is one of the most divisive, repugnant ideas we've ever seen come from our nation's White House. But when President Trump formed his entire campaign on calls for a ban and an entire religion from our country, we shouldn't be so surprised that this White House is full of individuals who made it one of their first priorities to defame Muslims. At its core, and in my heart, America is a nation that stands for religious freedom and for tolerance. The world needs to see that many here, far more than the other side, want our nation to be a welcoming place and a safe haven for all. And that's what this bill is about. So I'm proud to join my colleagues in introducing this bill. We must ensure that the United States will continue to remain a model of religious tolerance and freedom. And as much as our hearts are pulled emotionally by what President Trump has done, we also have to think in a smart way that on its face, the ban on Muslims doesn't make our country safer. In fact, it puts our country at greater risk. It makes us less safe. And that's what the American people need to focus on and understand. Not with our hearts, but use your minds. Understand what he's doing is not making us a safer nation, but putting us at risk. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Beyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, very much. Thank you, Congressman Carali. And next, my honor to introduce the longtime member of Congress from the District of Columbia, Eleanor Holmesdale.
Thank you very much. I really got to thank my friend Don Beyer for his prescience in early understanding the importance of our act, the Freedom of Religion Act, and coming forward today with so many of us to introduce the act. Particularly thank Mr. Khan for once again coming forward to be with us. You have probably done more than any other person in our country to make America understand who we are and who we must remain. The self-inflicted confusion over admissions of Muslims and others, and the demonstrations across our country and worldwide cry out for our bill this year. We are compelled, if you think about it, to examine why our country was even founded. The first colonists were not refugees from politics or poverty. They gave up whatever they had and risked everything to come to this largely unsettled wilderness of a country so that they could practice their religion freely and openly without government interference. It was freedom of religion, if you think about it, that was at the core of the founding of our nation. So our bill takes religion off the table as a tool for deciding who is admitted to the United States, whether as immigrants, refugees, or international visitors. The Freedom of Religion Act is a testament to the nation's strength. It shows we know how to keep our country safe without sacrificing our most fundamental values. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor, very much. Now my honor to introduce the distinguished Congresswoman from Illinois, John Schakowsky.
Thank you. I think all of us remember
how Khizr Khan and his wife galvanized the entire nation and the whole television audience that was watching the night. He held up this Constitution and spoke so eloquently about no religious test in the United States of America. And I stand here today as a proud Jew and a daughter of immigrants who, like many others, left Russia at a time when Jews were subject to pogroms and discrimination, and came to the United States to flee religious persecution. And now the district that I'm so proud to represent is one of the most diverse in the country. We're at my alma mater high school now. 50 languages are spoken, and people come there because it is a welcoming community. And President Trump's Muslim ban, and let's not call it by any other name, that is what it is, undermines our values as a nation. Bigotry does not make America great. It undermines our strength as a country by giving in to fear-mongering, hate, and division. You know, we are being asked in some ways to make a choice between security and compassion. That is a false choice. Our country is more dangerous because of this kind of religious discrimination. It helps our enemies, ISIS, when we attack or display bigotry toward Muslims. Muslim refugees fleeing the horrible violence in Syria need our help. It is heartbreaking that the Trump administration has ordered us to turn our back to their plight, to turn our back on that 3-year-old child, a refugee from Syria who washed up on the beaches of Turkey. Who are we? And that is what we're deciding today when we say there will be no religious test. We will be true to our Constitution, to our values of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. My dear friend, the member of Congress from St. Paul, Minnesota, Betty McCullough.
I am Congresswoman Betty McCollum, and I do proudly represent Minnesota's 4th District in the U.S. House. And I want to add my special thanks to Mr. Khan for joining us. Your courage, your strong voice over the past year has served as an inspiration to every single one of us. Ms. Lynn, I want to express my gratitude for your work and the work of the American Civil Liberties Union over the weekend to safeguard the rights of many people caught in the chaos of President Trump's executive order. Here we are today to affirm some of our country's fundamental tenets: our constitutional guarantee of religious freedom, our values of tolerance and pluralism. Our Constitution could not be more explicit. The United States is a place where we treat everyone the same, no matter what God they worship or whether they even choose to worship a God. Back home in Minnesota, we are tolerant, welcoming values. We are a strong state because of those values. Our state is better off because we've embraced immigrants of every nationality and religion, including the vibrant Muslim community that calls our Twin Cities home. Discriminating based on religion, as President Trump's executive order has done, divides our communities, and it makes our country more isolated in the world. We've seen the impact of this executive order in Minnesota this past week, and we know it makes our country weaker, not stronger. Just let me give you a couple examples from my home state. America's weaker when bigotry triumphs compassion, and we send a 3-year-old Somali girl and her 4-year-old Somali boy who want to reunite with their father in the United States. We send them back to a Kenyan refugee camp. How does that make us stronger? America's weaker when our leaders turn their backs on Afghans who helped our country, helped our soldiers fight against Al-Qaeda. Leaving them stranded in the Middle East, how does that make America stronger? America is weaker when we force an elderly woman from Myanmar to remain in Thailand instead of joining her daughter in St. Paul. Over the past week, people from every walk of life have stood up and spoken out against President Trump's discriminatory executive order. We stand here today as we have heard from business leaders, labor unions, educators, and the faith community, military veterans, and distinguished diplomats. The Freedom of Religion Act, which Representative Beyer spearheaded, would end the most shameful abuses of President Trump's executive order and make it unequivocally clear that the United States will never stand for discrimination. This is not a time for us to remain silent. So to my Republican friends, you should speak out and join us in supporting the Freedom of Religious Act. And I would also encourage them to look at the Statue of Liberty's Value Act. We must make every effort. We must do everything we can to defend our Constitution and our American values. That's the oath of office we took. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Joanne Lynn, who's the Senior Immigration Policy Counsel for the American Civil Liberties Union, who's been very busy this last week.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here with these congressional leaders and all of you. The American Civil Liberties Union is proud and pleased to stand here today with Mr. Khizr Khan and these courageous House leaders to denounce and condemn unequivocally President Trump's refugee and Muslim ban. Now, the president may think that with the stroke of a pen he can overturn American immigration and refugee policy, but he will not have the last word. The events of the past few days have made it loud and clear that Americans across the country will not abide by this refugee and Muslim ban. Whether it is introducing today's Freedom of Religion Act, or protesting at Dulles, thank you Representative Beyer, or at JFK, thank you Representative Crowley, or securing the release of people detained unlawfully, thank you Representative Schakowsky, or participating in Monday's rally at the Supreme Court, thank you Representative McCollum, and many others. Our congressional leaders and Americans across the country are rising up to say, America is not a land of walls and shuttered doors. We are not a people motivated by hate and fear. Rather, Americans honor and lift up the Statue of Liberty, a beacon of hope and freedom for refugees and immigrants worldwide. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be breathe free. Americans understand that this country was built by people from all over the world, including refugees who fled here so they could worship the God that they chose and worship freely without fear of a king or despot attacking them. Now, for some reason, our president has a very faulty memory. He has forgotten why the Pilgrims and Quakers fled Europe and came to this land. He has forgotten that the founders of our government wrote the First Amendment, and he has forgotten that the First Amendment has enshrined constitutional protections that guarantee that our government may not favor or show preference for any religion over another. And yet, President Trump has stated clearly a preference for Christian refugees over Muslim refugees. Favoring one religion over another is quintessential religious discrimination, which strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. Our Constitution will not permit it, and neither will the ACLU. The ACLU joins these congressional leaders and Americans around the country. We will not allow President Trump to take a wrecking ball to the Statue of Liberty. We stand unified and will continue to oppose these bans and any other presidential edicts that target Muslims, refugees, or immigrants. And no matter what the president chooses to do today or going forward, the ACLU will vigilantly defend the civil liberties and civil rights of all people. Thank you.
Now my pleasure and honor to introduce Mr. Andre Carson, the Member of Congress from Indianapolis.
Thank you, Congressman Beyer. Thank you for your leadership to the ACLU, to the faith community, to everyone present today. I'm very proud to show my support for the values that make the United States strong. You know, we've been hearing a lot about President Trump's Muslim ban. Masked by the words extreme vetting, this executive order halts the arrival of all refugees and blocks the admission of immigrants, including permanent residents, from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. Just days before his Muslim ban, he issued a very different order, an order aimed at targeting and deporting undocumented immigrants under the guise of reducing illegal immigration. In 2 weeks since Mr. Trump has taken office, he has made one thing clear. He is not concerned with upholding our nation's laws or keeping the great traditions of the United States of America. This is a country that accepts people, or should accept people, from all faiths, all races, all ethnicities, in all countries around the globe. There should not be a religious test for entering the U.S. Under the guise of national security, I think this is an attempt to deceive the American public and distract lawmakers and advocates from constructive conversations about how to resolve international conflicts and strengthen our borders. From 1975 to 2015, no individuals from the 7 countries were responsible for attacks on U.S. citizens. I'm thankful the ACLU and the legal community around the globe, they've risen to the challenge. Judges in cities like New York, Boston, and Los Angeles have effectively blocked major portions of the executive order from effectively proceeding pending hearings. But our work is not done. Brothers and sisters, we must stand together as a united front and say this is not who we are as a nation. Thank you, Don.
And finally, as a diplomat, Arslan Suleiman, the former acting U.S. Special Envoy to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation at the U.S. Department of State. Arslan.
Thank you, Congressman Beyer, members of Congress, Mr. Khan. Good morning. America was not founded on the basis of creed or race or ethnicity. We are a nation founded on the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, with certain inalienable rights. Religious freedom is one of those rights, the very first right enumerated in our Constitution's Bill of Rights. Our American values, our commitment to equality, to liberty, to human rights, is the core of our strength and global leadership. We ensure our own safety when those universal values are shared and protected globally. I've served our country as a diplomat, working to protect our national security by forging relationships and working to protect human rights, including religious freedom, around the globe. I know through experience that how we protect human rights and religious freedom at home determines how well we can promote them abroad, and thus how well we can protect our own security. That is why President Trump's travel bans are so problematic. By targeting Muslims for these travel bans, President Trump has betrayed American values and has made America less safe. Terrorists are using the Muslim travel ban in their recruitment propaganda, feeding their narrative and strengthening their ability to recruit and inspire attacks. This makes America less safe. Countries on the front line of fighting against terrorists, like Iraq, have naturally taken offense to inclusion in the ban, threatening much-needed cooperation in fighting terrorism. This makes America less safe. The ban reneges on our pledges to individuals like translators who helped our troops, making future collaboration by such experts unlikely. This makes America less safe. Refugees are fleeing persecution and war and terror. We give them refuge because it is the right thing to do, and because we've learned from past mistakes where we turned away such victims of war. Trump's ban betrays our values by shutting the door to refugees and dramatically limiting the numbers that we admit. This abdication of leadership makes America less safe. The Constitution makes clear that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. We have no religious test to becoming an American citizen, no religious test to serve, No religious test to vote. No religious test to be treated with dignity. No religious test to ensure that our rights are protected. And no religious test for our compassion. That is why this bill is so important. It clarifies that America has no religious test for admission into the United States. It reasserts our core American value of religious freedom. This bill makes America safe again. Thank you, Congressman.
We'll be happy to take a few questions before people want to get warm again, and then welcome to do this. Yes, please.
Thank you.